Good evening, campers, it's me, Kira. Today I'm going to give you a list of 10 classics that you must read. This is the first part of the triptych of videos where we're going to discuss 10 classics, 10 modern classics, and then 10 contemporary works that I think would be most beneficial to readers. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be defining a classic as anything before the year 1900. To set your expectations, I'm only going to be talking about classics that I myself have read. Additionally, I am not purported to say that these are the best classics, neither am I going to say that all of these classics are my favourite. The purpose of this is if you're starting to get into classics or starting to read, I want to give you a good foundation. Therefore, these books are the most influential in my humble opinion of the ones that I've read. This will provide you a good bedrock. Lastly, the first published novel is arguably the 1719 book Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. Therefore, the majority of these classics are not novels. They are plays. They are poems. I think it's vitally important for us to engage in these other writing forms and methods in order to understand where the novel has come to. Enough talk, let's get into it. Ancient classics. Just by saying the title alone of this, you're going to know the complex that came millennia afterwards. That is Oedipus Rex. Everyone, if they don't know, has definitely heard of the Oedipus complex. Therefore, go and read the classic that influenced that. Additionally, if you're a little bit of a swot, you could also read Electra, the inverse of the Oedipus complex. Yes, there is such thing as the Electra complex, where a girl wants to kill their mother in order to get closer to their father. You're welcome. Moving from 400 BC, we're going to be moving to 1400 AD. Yes, we're skipping a lot of centuries, but I don't think there's anything worthwhile during that time. Of this list of 10 books, this is actually the classic that I read most recently. Yes, this is Dante's Inferno. Now, I'm not saying you should read all of the Divine Comedy, because Dante's Purgatorio and Dante's Paradiso moves into a level that was like unfathomably difficult. But Inferno is the one that most people have heard of. Inferno is the most readable out of the entire Divine Comedy, and Dante's Inferno has influenced so much. And to stress, after reading Dante's Inferno, I was a little bit dumbfounded how much it has influenced modern cultural reference points that even now I can go, how did I ever miss that? If you don't know what Dante's Inferno is, in a nutshell, Dante Alighieri, the poet, is taken into hell by his guide Virgil and witnesses gruesome and horrid acts of people that he knew and of historical figures. And the deeper we move through the circles of hell, the worse. It gets really, like the bit with the snakes. I don't know what Dante was on to come up with that snake scenario. That's not something I would want to do on a Tuesday afternoon. One thing I will say about Dante's Inferno is that it's very political. Dante is talking about people that he knew. He's talking about the church and people who did him wrong while he was in exile. If you're reading it and you don't really understand all the references, that's okay. You're not going to understand everything that Dante is talking about. Now we're going to move into the 15th century with Everyman by, well, we don't know. It's by Anonymous. Everyman is the story about an everyman who realizes that he has no one but himself in order to get a good life. He meets many virtues, allegorical figures who represent like a part of our life. Within the play, he also meets death in order to tally up the good and bad in his life, and realizes that the only way he will ever reach salvation is through worship. Yes, this is very religious. I know a lot of people kind of get their backs up when it comes to religion, but the morality play and the simplicity of Everyman, I think, is the perfect medium in order to understand what the morality play is and how it gets subverted within the Jacobean era. Yes, at the tail end of the 16th century, we have one of the most famous morality plays that subverts everything that Everyman was doing. That is Christopher Marlowe's Faust. A text only. Do not read the B text. You don't need it. Text A only. Faust, the very clever man who decides to sell his soul to the devil in order to become an even cleverer person. How fun. Have I put Marlowe in here because I'm not a big fan of Shakespeare? Yes. But Shakespeare is on this list. Despite if you love him or loathe him, I absolutely loathe him. We cannot negate Shakespeare's influence. Read any one of the big three. Romeo, Juliet, Macbeth, and Hamlet. Out of those three, I'd probably say Macbeth is my favourite. But if you don't want to read them, do not worry. There are enough free online performances of Shakespeare that if you would rather not read the text, you can watch it. And that's the exact same for Faust, for Oedipus, for Electra. I actually don't know about Everyman. You might have to read Everyman. It hasn't garnered an international audience in the way that the others have. Oh, another thing that's worth mentioning is because these are all out of print, Project Gutenberg, yes, you can read them all online for free, and I will leave links to every single one of these that is out of copyright and are available via Project Gutenberg all down below. Moving into the 17th century, we have the most influential English poet ever. Like, everyone knows this poem better than they know Genesis from the Bible, even though more people are likely to have read Genesis over this poem. It is John Milton's Paradise Lost. Out of all the classics here, I want to stress and I want to emphasize this from the off. This is ridiculously difficult. People online who have said that they've read Paradise Lost and understood everything that was going on throughout the 12 books of poetry are lying to you. At times it is unpenetrable. Everyone knows the story of the fallen angel Lucifer. It is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And so many people stop after that book 2 point when Lucifer goes into Eden and starts to turn Adam and Eve against God. Equally, this is a book not about satanic worship. Milton is very explicit that you should be worshipping God, and Paradise Lost is all about that submission towards a higher power. Again, very religious, drawing upon that influence of Everyman, this morality of Satan himself, and where does he stand for what he wants to do. Equally, as we move into the 18th and 19th century, we have the emergence of Romanticism, and Paradise Lost was a bedrock towards the satanic school of poetry. Indeed, William Blake called himself the prophetic son of Milton. But in saying that, one of the biggest literary movements, Romanticism, all of them relate to Milton in some way. The majority of the Anglo-Romantics even talk about Milton directly. So Milton's Paradise Lost is an absolute must. As much as I would love to talk about the Anglo-Romantics, truly, if we're talking about Romanticism, the epitome of Romanticism is a novel. Yes, we finally got into novels, what can I say, people? And that is the 1774 novel by Goethe, The Sorrows of Young Werther. The Sorrows of Young Werther is Romanticism 101. Young Werther pines for his love and realised that without it, there is absolutely nothing in this life worth living. As much as we could talk about the legacy of Romanticism and the legacy of young Werther, actually during the time that it was written, there was a thing where men succumbed to Wertherism. Wertherism was this bizarre movement. Young men would dress up, it's very dark academia actually, would dress up in ye olde clothes, professing their love, and then just killing themselves. They were mass suicides because of this book. The Sorrows of Young Werther is written in an epistolary form. That is, it is written via letters. And you know what I say about the epistolary form? It's the junk mail of literature. But to cut your teeth on Romanticism, The Sorrows of Young Werther is the go-to over anything else. And that's coming from someone who bloody loves the Anglo-Romantics. The last 3 books we're going to talk about genre fiction, seeing the roots of literature and seeing how they differ in some ways vastly from the originators is interesting. 1764, we have arguably the first Gothic novel. Yes, when someone says, well, what is Gothic? Now you can go back to this book and find out exactly what it is. It is Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto. One of the bizarrest reads I have ever read. It is still in my mind. For some reason, it just drips Gothic. There is so much supernatural and paranormal activity going on. It is the benchmark of what Gothic is. Penultimately, let's talk about science fiction. And we have the first science fiction novel in 1818 with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I myself am guilty of this. I thought I knew what Frankenstein was based off the image that we are given, that stereotypical Frankenstein look. But Frankenstein is so different. Frankenstein's monster is an abomination, an accumulation of dead corpses, revitalized, but wants love. The monster sees himself as the first man, like Adam, and wants his Eve, and is begging Frankenstein to create that for him. Additionally, within Frankenstein, the monster runs off and reads Paradise Lost. And hopefully what you've been able to see throughout this video is that how a lot of these novels map onto one another, and that's not just a coincidence. But before we talk about that, let's finish off this list. The last classic that I think you should read, a seminal crime novel, Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. By gosh, that book is one of the finest pieces of work you could ever read. If out of all of this list, if you decide to pick up one, it's Crime and Punishment. It will not let you down. Dostoevsky, again, is the benchmark of what great literature should be put up against. Within this, I haven't really given you a plot summary. I haven't really given you any narrative structure to the majority of these. And where you do know the story, or where I have told you the general gist of where the story goes, seeing how influential they are and understanding where the legacies of these novels had influenced media that you enjoy, you'll be able to realise that just by telling the story, just being able to relay the plot, isn't really half of it. These are 10 classics that I think you must read. I believe these are the most influential. Please let me know what ones I have missed off, because I probably haven't read them. There's a lot of classics that I have not read. Let me know what your 10 would be. What do you think are the most must-read, the most influential classics? I look forward to reading them, and I hope you look forward to reading some of these classics. Bye!